Hey guys. In my experience as a music teacher and a choir director, I've often been asked, how come I can't hear overtones? I don't mean me, it's people asking me why they can't hear them. And so I've sometimes done live demonstrations to try to help people hear overtones, and that's a pretty good way to do it. But I decided this week, because of a question that came in last week, that I would talk a little bit about how to hear overtones, and I guarantee that everyone, after you've watched this video, will not be able to say that you've never heard an overtone. So why don't people hear overtones sometimes? It very well could be that they haven't heard one that's loud enough that they could identify it and say, oh, I hear it. It also could be that they don't know what to listen for. Overtones have predictable frequencies that you can, if you know what to listen for, they're easier to hear. And also, everybody can hear them, but not everybody understands that what they're hearing are the overtones. So I want to break this down a little bit for you now. So what are overtones? Overtones are really just tones above other tones, hence they're called overtones. A fundamental frequency vibrates, and then it causes other air molecules to vibrate in sympathetic vibration. And it's very much like when a drop hits a pond. You've seen that, and we can see that visually, that there's not just one wave that's created, but a number of waves that also create smaller ones as they ripple out. So if you think of your singing kind of as a tone, or as a pebble being dropped in water, it is sympathetically making other things vibrate, and those tones above the fundamental are called overtones. Overtones create the phenomenon that's called timbre, and timbre is the characteristic sound of anything. So if a flute is playing one note, and a clarinet is playing the same note, and an oboe is playing the same note, you're going to be able to pick out which one is the oboe and which one is the clarinet and which one is the flute. And it has to do with which overtones above the fundamental are being harmonically enhanced. And so the voice is an instrument that can actually change its color quite a bit, which is why the human voice has a very wide range of expressive qualities based on timbre. And so the reason why you can do that with the voice is that you can change the size of the space and the tubing and how the tongue is placed. And these all affect how different overtones are enhanced, and it makes a difference in the sound. So how do overtones work? Well, if we take a fundamental like this note, C, the overtones above it will happen in these predictable frequencies. You'll have an octave above that, and then a fifth above that, and then a fourth, which is another C. So we've had C, C, G, C, and then an E, and then a G, and then a B flat, which is why I think barbershop is God's music, and then another C, and then a D, and they get smaller and smaller as you go up from there. So if you're trying to hear an overtone, let's say within a chorus, the first thing you should probably listen for is the fifth above the first overtone, which would be the second overtone above the fundamental. So if you're thinking 1, you're listening for 5, but it's not going to be as low as that. You're going to be listening for something that's much higher, and it has kind of a whistle type quality. And that's one reason why I think people aren't really sure what they're hearing, because they just feel like it's a note that's in the room and not specifically an overtone. So the overtone series itself, you may find this fascinating, doesn't tune as to the piano. The piano is an equally tempered instrument. So when I play these notes, they're actually out of tune. My piano's actually more out of tune than most. But pianos are equally tempered, so they're equally out of tune. The only thing that really is in tune are the octaves. Now, if you want to tune to the overtone series itself, then you always want to sing octaves perfectly. And then when it comes to the fifth, when it comes to 5, you would sing it about 2 cents sharp, probably. So we want our 5s and chords to be pretty high. And then The third itself, we're always talking about trying to keep the major third high, and that's because people sing it so flat. But it really needs to be about 14 cents flat to actually be within the overtone series. And then that flat 7 needs to be about 31 cents flat to really tune and make, you know, that barbershop ring, to make that sort of justly tuned chord that aligns with the overtone series. When you tune with the overtone series, you get a little bit more shimmer, and you get a little bit more, I think, pleasing sound. And so the overtone series is our friend, really, but we have to make sure that we're tuning with it. As I said earlier, the human voice has a potential to change its color and timbre by an ability to change tongue position and size of the opening, so that whereas a flute brings out similar overtones whenever it plays, the human voice has a great potential to be expressive with different colors. And what we're really saying is to bring out different overtones. And so looking at my spectral analysis here, my TE tuner, I want you to take a look at what happens when I change vowels and colors. The green bars are different overtones that are being brought out. Isn't that fascinating? So how we put our tongue and the space that we create is really a great tool we have to be expressive singers. And it all has to do with overtones. Now, I said earlier that the overtone has kind of a whistle-like quality. And I think that some people don't think they hear overtones because they might hear that whistle kind of sound, but they don't associate that with an overtone. And so I went to the internet and I found a couple really good examples of overtone singers. Now, overtone singers just drone one note, and then they manipulate the tongue and the spaces inside, and they learn how to do that to bring out certain overtones. And these people specialize in actually sort of creating songs while they drone one note. And so the first person that we're going to listen to is a guy named Nestor Kornblum. And Nestor Kornblum is going to perform Amazing Grace while he only drones one tone. I do believe you'll be able to hear this. Let's give it a listen. Pretty cool, right? Well, here is another example that I think is even more astounding. This person is named Anna Marie Hefela, and she is an overtone singer. And because she is a female, she's actually creating overtones that are a little bit closer together, higher up in the range, and you can really, really hear them. And so let's listen to a little demonstration of her, not doing a song, but just showing the overtone series, and see if you can hear the intervals there and which ones there are. Wasn't that totally cool? You have to admit you heard that. If you've never heard an overtone, you can't say that anymore. What about with a choir? when you have a whole choir singing a drone or a note together, are there audible overtones created? And there is a really good example in a piece called Past Life Melodies by Sarah Hopkins. And in this piece, it's like maybe a 5 or 6 minute piece. It's relatively long. And at the end, she has the choir create a drone. And above that drone are the overtones. So now that you've heard a couple examples of single people making overtones, see if you can pick out the overtones now that the entire choir is making by creating these drones. It's a really neat effect. Here we go. I wanted to bring you some barbershop examples of overtones because, that's what people want to hear when they're singing barbershop. And I found a great example online. And it didn't make sense for me to try to recreate this. Kathleen Hansen, who lives in San Diego, on her website, K Hansen Music, actually put together a little segment on overtones. And then she had some barbershop examples. And so I want to shout out to Kathleen and just say what great work. And I'm kind of quoting your work right here for some of our guys because I think it's as good as I could possibly do. So let's hear a little example of barbershop overtones.
In this first example, the vagrants, we will hear a very short but very loud overtone. But what we're listening for is this tone. No one is singing that note. Here it is again. Clearly the crowd loved it. This next submission is audio only, and it's credited as being Dundalk's Sweet Adeline Chorus from Maryland. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. Sorry. I'd like you to follow the tenor line. What they're singing is this. Just as long as time goes by. So that's what we hear in the part. But what you'll hear on the last note is an overtone popping up to. So listen for that note at the end. Just as long as time Next up, this is After Hours Quartet. No one is singing this note.
So I hope this has been helpful. I hope now that if you didn't know what overtones are, that now you have some idea of what they are, how they're produced, and how to listen for them. So the next time you're trying to hear them in a room, just recognize they're there and that they're probably at the octave and the fifth and the octave and the third and at the flat seven and then at 2 and then 3, and they get smaller and smaller. And if you know that those are the ones that might be there, you'll know how to listen for them. And again, I think if you're trying to hear them, imagine that someone is whistling a tone that no one is singing. So if you hear guys all singing this, I would be listening for that, like who's whistling that note? And if you can hear the whistle tone That's what you're hearing as an overtone. Now in barbershop, sometimes because we can hear frequencies above some of those first overtones, it sounds like a shimmer. And that's kind of what we're listening for, is a real sort of expansion and shimmer. And if you can hear that in a chord, again, you're hearing overtones. Okay, I hope that was helpful. And maybe we can talk about this week, and I hope to see you all soon. Can't wait till we can sing together again. This is Dr. Chris, and have a great day.